Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Self-Published Success, a show that highlights forward-thinking authors who chose self-publishing over traditional and found success in doing so. My name is John Feldman, founder of Visionary Literary, and your host for today's show. Our guest today is Reggie James. Reggie hosts the Sprint Hard, Iterate Fast podcast. He's a startup founder, the lifestyle tech career coach, and CEO of Beaker Flint, a digital product resource consultancy based in Melbourne, Australia. He's also the author of the Resilient ScaleUp. After learning business scaling practices the hard way, he finally found a roadmap to scaling success and wants to share it with you. Reggie, thank you for being here.
My pleasure, John. Thanks for having me on.
So tell us a little bit more. There are many titles inside that brief intro that I just gave. So tell us a little bit more about you, your background, and what got you to the point where you are ready to release your book.
Sure. Yeah. So that's it's really interesting. I mean, I've done so many things, and you're right. There's a lot of titles there. It's funny. I was on a panel speaker a few weeks ago, and the guy read my introduction. And he's like, "How do you do so many things?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it's really not that many things. It sounds like a lot, but it really isn't. It all kind of ties together. My business focuses on helping tech businesses scale up their team. So we go out and find contract product managers, product owners, tech BAs, that kind of stuff. And we bring them in on contract. And we normally work with, businesses that are growing really quickly. So for me, it's a two-sided market. I need to have a brand that appeals to people who are looking to move into tech. I need to have a brand that appeals to people who need to bring people into their business. So those are the two things that in terms of the lifestyle tech career coach, and then also being the CEO of the resource consultancy. So, and it's been a wild journey to get here. I'm excited to talk about the book. I'm excited to talk about just how I got here in my self-published journey, but a lot of it had to do with starting over again. So the book was kind of a way for me to kind of hit the reset button on a bunch of business activity that was exciting but painful, and there were a lot of hard things in there that I'm sure we can unpack today.
Absolutely. Yeah. So anyone who has ever started a business, you've obviously been in several, knows that you basically learn by doing, trial and error. So the book and everything inside the book, I'm sure, is amazing content for anyone listening and watching. As Reggie and I record this, the book has yet to be released. It's still in pre-order, but by the time this podcast is released, it should be available on Amazon, and we'll send you to Reggie's link at the end. But it's very amazing cover. It looks great, and I'm excited to read it. But I want to talk about the importance of two things. Tech, obviously, technology is huge. So us, like our company, writing books using AI, like tech is just incredible. And the fact that so many people post-COVID are starting their own businesses and realizing the benefit of that. So the two of these things are merging into the next, I would like to say the next 5 to 10 years, but at the speed at which tech is moving, like it's the next, 6 to 12 months. And then who knows what will come after. But for you, being in tech and in startups, what are some of the things that you see, like, I don't know, that people should know as they get into maybe like a tech startup?
I think what you said is exactly right. I mean, even you thinking you're starting a small business from your bedroom, or you've got funding from a big VC. Like it's not too dissimilar in the sense that you really don't know what's in front of you. You do as much research and as much homework as you can. You get really good business mentors and coaches around you who have seen things and can help you navigate those pitfalls. But like you said, it is learning on the job. One of the companies I worked with, we had what we believed was a affirmative, from a big grocery chain store in the UK that they were going to invest, and they were expected to invest about 40 million, to get what was actually a conversational bot before this got, huge. This was maybe 6-7 years ago. And we started scaling up our team, and we didn't land the sale. And so we had brought on like 25 developers to start building out this platform, and the sale fell through. So it's like you don't know what's going to happen. It is like you're constantly on the edge, and I think you really gotta keep trying different things. It's a hard path, but it's a fun adventure, and I've done that ride a few times. So I would tell people, be ready for the adventure, be ready for everything that you're going to learn. Prepare yourself before you do it too, for the lessons that you think you need to learn through that, because it's not guaranteed. Most startups fail, but it's still worth doing.
Yeah, it's funny that you say it, because this is my third time being through the startup phase two. Obviously, the first two are not around anymore. But it's almost like those situations that we're all in, where we're like, this is awful. Why did I put myself in this situation? And as you're living it day to day, you're like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? And then I can, like, for anyone watching, you can just see in Reggie's face the smile. Like, it's when you look back after the fact, you're like, okay, that was worth it. Like, it was fun. It was fun to learn those things. So in being kind of like in the trenches, in the startup mode is one thing, but your book and the things that you've learned that you want to use to help is about scaling up. So when it comes, the difference in mindset from someone who starts a company, maybe in the first year, first two, and in the scaling phase, is there a different mindset that someone should have or should bring into the scaling up phase?
Yeah, I think the different mindset is more on, getting your product to market. It could be two things. I mean, there's a scaling element of, getting your product to market. There's a scaling element of you've got the backing, and you've got the funding, and now you need to build your team. And I think that's something that people don't think about. We think about starting a business, we think about mainly getting product market fit. Is this going to work? Like, does anyone want this?
Yeah.
But when you find that they do, and that you need to now grow, it is a different beast. It is a different beast, because now you need to bring in more processes. You need to start standardizing how you do things. You need to be thinking about long-term succession planning. Like, you need to be thinking about leadership roles, and mentoring people to come into leadership roles, or do you hire externally for that? There's a whole raft of things that change. And then you still got to be thinking about the competition, and is your product still on the bleeding edge? Like, there's so many different things to think about. So I would say, yes, certainly it's a different mindset. It's a different frame of thinking. And my experience with it has been that it's a fun and exciting time, but it comes with its own set of challenges, for sure.
Good. So yeah, obviously many, many challenges. At the beginning, it's almost like you're just trying to keep your head above water. But after, and you're in scaling phase, then there's so many different things. Once your head's above water, you can see what's around you. And now you have to start paying attention as well. So you wrote this book after how many years and how many different startups approximately were you a part of?
So I myself at the time had done 3 different startups, three different businesses. And then I've been a part or worked with at least 10 others. So, that comes from working in an agency where our clients were primarily startups. And then there was another time where I was, the example I gave to you before, I was a CEO of a conversational interface bot. And that's where we were doing some big scaling there as well. So, those are my experiences in terms of kind of going on that journey. And it was the failure of the last business where I decided, well, let me slow down a little bit, and let me write out the things I've done. Let me write down some of the knowledge that I have. And I think that was really kind of the birth of the book. That's how I kind of got into starting to write the book, was thinking, I'm at this like pivot point in my life, like, and I need to do something new. But my belief is that I don't know what people think, but for me, I've always thought, the thing that I just did is going to help me get to where I want to go. So how can I use the knowledge and the experiences of what I've just done and take another step forward? And maybe it's a different business, maybe it's helping someone else in their business, but how do I leverage what I just done? And so for me, the book was kind of a milestone like position of like, all right, just did a bunch of stuff, like business, like it's done, it's finished. We're doing something new now. Okay, let me consolidate all of my learnings and like package it in something that I can give someone else and say, hey, here's some lessons for you, as you go through your own journey of building your business that I've done, and I want to help you.
And that's so important, especially the last thing that you said. You've already done it. So you've been part of more than a dozen startups. And you said a few minutes ago, when giving advice to somebody who's just starting out, mentors, find mentors, find someone who has been there, who has done what you have done. And the thing that I love about books, like I've read books by some of the top CEOs, founder Jeff Bezos' book. Like I would never be able to speak one-on-one with Jeff Bezos, but I have his book and I have all of his, like, everything that he's written, all the advice that he gives, I can still get. So it's like a one-on-one mentorship. It's why I love books. From your standpoint, you have learned so much. And by writing your book, you're helping people without, like, you wouldn't be able to help everyone one-on-one. You just don't have enough time in the day. But writing the book, everyone now who reads your book can take 12 years and 12 different startups and X number of years worth of your knowledge and absorb it without having to take any of your time. And they get to learn all of that. So mentorships, like you said, are absolutely huge. And reading books, it's a one-on-one mentorship with you, with Reggie. So I appreciate you writing the book, because that's what I love reading books by people who've been there.
I love that connection you make between books and mentorship. And I definitely see my books as those are my mentors in a lot of ways. I keep most of my books on Kindle, so I can recall them and look at my highlights.
Yeah.
And that's the thing I do. Is like, oh, what did that mentor say? What did that person say? What, you know what I mean? And it's going back through the book and looking at the highlight and getting inspiration or getting an answer, or, you know what I mean? It's 100%. It is that books are mentors.
Yeah. It's like having the author on call. Was it
100%?
Yeah. So you have all of this knowledge. You've been through all of these startups. You have connections for sure. You could easily, given your connections, the backings that you have, you could have went to a traditional publisher. You could have shown them your track record, what you have, the books that you have, and they probably would have published you. It would have been easy, but you chose to self-publish. Tell us why, like, was traditional publishing ever even considered, or did you just know right away the benefits of self-publishing and you're like, look, I want to keep this information because I know that it's mine and it's close to my heart?
I think for me, one of the reasons I chose to go down the self-publishing route was primarily because I wanted to control my process. And I wanted to move as fast as I could. That was the other thing was I didn't want to go through a process of waiting. For me, it was, like I said, it was a milestone place that I was in terms of saying, well, I'm gonna, to be a little bit more clear about that, was actually, I live in Australia. I was visiting family in North America, and it was basically like a 4-month break. And we traveled, 2 months in Canada. We did 2 months in the US, just catching up, seeing family after not being able to travel from COVID. And it was just this space that I was in that I'm like, hey, like I've got the mental break that I need right now to pull this together. And after this trip is done, like I'm going to start something new. And for me, it was about the speed and saying, I'm gonna pump this out. I'm not gonna waste any time looking for someone who's gonna publish it and slow down my process. I'm just gonna get it done, and I'm glad that I did it that way. I think it was a difficult learning process. I'm sure we'll talk about that. it was definitely, as a first time author, a difficult process of trying to figure out how to do it and how to navigate editing and design and all that stuff. But that was my choice. So I did look at going down that traditional publishing path, and I just thought, no, I want to do this as fast as possible.
Yeah. Especially for you, someone who's in tech, such a fast moving world. Being in tech and then also having all this knowledge, right? Like everything that you've learned, if the traditional process could have taken 2 years to get the book out, and by that time you might have been like, well, hold on a second, because things have changed now. So I want to go back and make some adjustments to it. But the everything that you've learned, right? Like you said, big learning curve for a first time author. So what was the I guess the first moment when you started, right? So you had this break, 4 months in North America, you're writing all of this out. What was the first moment where you were like, what am I doing? I'm so lost.
that didn't take very long. That was literally like day two, where I'm like, what am I doing? Like, why am I doing this? I think, I was in my father-in-law's basement office, and it's like, okay, I've got, like, my wife and her sisters, they're looking after our daughter, and I've got the time, like, I've got support around me, like, I don't have to be anywhere, I don't have to do anything, I can sit down and write this book. And I'm sitting there thinking, well, man, how do I even get started? Like, what, how do you write a book? And I found some good materials, and one of them that was really helpful was because I have a consulting background, and this resource was saying, one way you can approach writing your book is, like, you might do like a 2-day workshop. Like, think about how you might train a group of 20 people, and on some subject. And I've done that so many times. Like, my last business, we were doing a lot of consulting where we did a lot of workshops like that. So planning a 2-day workshop, it was a natural thing to me to say, oh yeah, like, well, okay, if I wanted to teach them this, I would take them through this concept and this concept and this concept. And so essentially it was like, yeah, there's your book, it's a 2-day workshop. What are different, modules in which you would train on. And that's how I came up with my outline. And so I think it was a process of kind of having to search and figure out, how do I take myself to the next step? Well, first of all, what is the next step and how do I get there? And I found some really good resources that helped me to do it, but it was definitely confusing. I didn't have anyone to walk me through, what how to do that, even how to get the ideas out of your mind. And it's funny, all the AI stuff out here now, where it's
Yes.
like, I mean, I did use some tools like that to help me get some ideas, but there wasn't Chat GPT, that wasn't out yet. And so it's kind of like, whether or not I would have used it, but I just think that, trying to come up with ideas, and something else I kind of hit on when I was doing my research was, you can write about what or you can write about what is trending and what's popular. And those are kind of two approaches to writing a book. And for me, it was like, you know what, this is my first book. I'm coming through something. I want to capture all my knowledge. I'm going to write about what I know. And so for me, although there were a lot of AI tools out there, I decided I'm gonna lean on, as much as possible, the experiences that I can conjure up in my own mind. I think that was a hard part, is figuring out how to get the ideas out of my head. That was probably the hardest part. And that was probably the time where I had committed to writing a certain number of chapters, and I'm thinking to myself, what are you doing? Like, where are you going to get another few chapters from? Like, what is this
Yeah.
chapter about? Does this even make sense? Like, is anyone going to read this? Like, you have those thoughts. And so yeah, it was kind of racking my brain for a few weeks, trying to just get the ideas out.
Yeah. So you're not alone in that. That's fairly common for once you hit a certain point to say, especially when you're going through the process of doing everything manually. When you hit your certain word count, you hit your chapters, and you're like, man, I feel like I am drained. What else can I think of to pour into this book? Um, so everything that you've put into the book, it's you hit the point where it's edited, it's done. being in tech, this is something that I'm always curious about for people in tech. Like I feel like a broken record already. I've been saying that the speed and tech. Um, how difficult was it for you to put a final stamp of approval on a book that can change?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's funny because once I finally put that final stamp of approval on it, I thought to myself, all right, like I'm probably going to come back to this at some stage. Like there's probably going to be a 2.0. In fact, I've already thought of ideas for like a 2.0 or revised.
Yeah.
It is challenging to say, oh, this is done. Like, and I had a really good developmental editor, but I had
It's
what I
important.
would consider an even better copy editor who gave me developmental notes, and I almost like literally shot myself. I'm like, I cannot do this again. Like, thank you for the notes, but I'm tapped.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was taking some of those notes in and thinking, yeah, she's got some good points here. Um, I think naturally because I have worked in tech for so long, I do have the mindset that something like that is never finished.
Right.
Um, and so I think my mind is naturally goes to the okay, well, what are the things that not necessarily that I need to improve upon, but how would I expand it? Like how would I expand it with new things? And so I think for me, once, you know, it was a combination of knowing that, your product is never finished.
Yeah.
And then also knowing that I was tapped out, it made it easier for me to say, yep, this version's done. And, growing up with that concept of, you're constantly releasing new iterations to your audience, to your buyer. um I think I felt comfortable enough to say, yep, I'll get some feedback, and I'll improve it and I'll release something else. So it wasn't too hard to get there. It was more just realizing that, yeah, this is a continual process.
Well, it seems like you were able to get to that mindset easier than most others, because that is something that you just continue to edit and edit, revise nonstop until you hit a point, and then at some point you're like, I'm not even going to release this. Like that is something that many authors fall into. But for you, and the benefit of self-publishing too is that had a traditional publisher gotten this book, you would print 20,000 copies at one time, and you've got to sell all those copies before you can have a revised version. But now for you, you're self-published, so all you have to do is go, if something changes, you just revise your files and upload new files, and it's the same book. So there are some things that you should put inside the copyright page to let you know which version that is. But still, that's a benefit. And I feel like every industry now is moving so quickly that it's an important aspect to keep in mind when you are writing, that nothing will ever be solidified, guaranteed forever. But speaking of that, of what's in the book, give us just a little, what is one thing that when someone opens your book there and reads, like what's a little snippet, a little sneak peek into what we can learn?
I think that the one of the things that you can learn, or one of my big beliefs is that culture is overrated. I think there's lots of talk about, company culture and about,
Lots of talk.
there's so much of it.
Uh,
um the saying strategy, or culture eats strategy for breakfast. And um you know I feel like, this might be controversial for me to say, but I feel like there's such a massive entitlement mindset when it comes to how the company is supposed to treat people and all these benefits and all these things. It's kind of like, this thing's created to make business and to put money in your pocket. It's not for you to find your life purpose.
yeah.
And I think there's so many voices out there that that try to, blend these ideas of me finding my purpose, or me having purpose at work and all these different things. And I think it makes it really hard for organizations, to compete when you also have to, you know, put all these things in place to keep your people happy. And I do think there should be some balance there. But
Yeah.
that's one thing I talk about in the book, specifically for businesses that are scaling. They are not happy places. And I think the things that you'll see on company websites about our culture and our team and all the fun stuff we're doing, like, man, I've seen the inside of businesses that are rapidly changing and growing, and they're not happy places.
Yeah.
And I think, one of the things that I tell, readers is to lean into that. Like, lean into the fact that, hey, your company you're doing something that, 1% of 1% people get to do. It's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be pretty. And there will be times where your culture is massively off, and you need to embrace it and understand that, people come and people go. So I talk about this idea of a minimal viable culture,
Oh, I like that.
making sure that your culture is just good enough for your highest performers. And the whole idea is understanding that you're going to, talking about iterate, you're going to iterate on your culture. But when you start cementing cultural practices, it's hard to undo them. So I think that's something that, leaders need to be mindful of is, if you say, hey, we're going to have, this work policy, one of the popular things that Netflix popularized was where you have, unlimited leave. You can take leave whenever you want. If you put a policy like that in place, like undoing something like that years later, when you find out that that was the wrong thing,
Yeah.
it's much more costly. So essentially, a lot of the early advice in the book is around how do you navigate those early stages of starting to grow. And one big piece of advice I give is around the culture and not obsessing over it. So that's just a snippet of kind of what's in there to get you started of like, hey, there's some ideas in here for your business, and where you are and what you're doing is not it's not like the startup phase. It's not like the the phase where you're a mature business and you've got customers and you've got things in place. Like you're expanding. That's a unique position. So that's just a little taste.
I love that. I love minimum viable culture too, because that's so important. Going all the way back to the beginning when we were saying like your first couple of years, you're just trying to keep your head above water. You're trying to stay afloat, and then when you start hiring and you start scaling, you can't be focused on, like you were saying, a major corporation having a certain kind of culture. Small companies, medium-sized companies can't really do that. You have to be on your toes. You have to be ready to move, to adjust. And when this LinkedIn is just flooded with culture, 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 culture. And it's like, this is not, every business is not the same.
Yeah.
They don't go down an assembly line. Everything is different. Everything needs to be different. So when employees and job seekers keep seeing this culture, 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 and why don't you treat me the same as, Google? It's like, because we can't. We have 15 employees and we're we're trying to stay afloat. So
it's it,
yeah,
it's
love it.
funny. Even in the book, I give an example of a company that I consulted to that was a large, mature company, and I think this might be in the opener. These guys had recently won and best company to work for in Australia, like accolade.
Wow.
And I consulted to them. And I can tell you that they were not the best company to work for in Australia. And so you look at that and you say, well, that's a marketing exercise. To the things that you need to do to qualify and win that designation. Like, it really is a marketing exercise. And I can tell you from firsthand experience of having interviewed, hundreds of people at that company for that particular engagement. They were not happy people, but the company was very successful and highly profitable. And so I think it's something to be mindful of as a business leader, as a CEO, as a founder, that, hey, your company, it may not be, the Google, the Zappos happiness workplace indicator type stuff. Like it may not be at that level, but you could still be really successful. And so I think it's understanding where culture fits into strategy, but not culture for the sake of culture.
I love that. I love it. So there's obviously so much that you have to offer inside of the Resilient Scale Up. I'm really excited to read it and to implement it. Is there another book that's on the way, or are you just focused on are you focused on just getting this one first? Or
You, that's a funny question. I laugh because my wife, she said maybe a few years ago, "Oh, yeah, I think you're gonna write a book," and I'm like, maybe, I don't know. And then I wrote this one. She's like, "I think you're gonna write another." I'm like, "No." I'm like, No, I'm not writing another one." So at this stage, I'm kidding. At this stage, I don't have any plans to, um, but I do think, as I move forward, starting a new business and um, you know, talking to my audience, like there might be something that comes to mind. I mean, I am a big reader. I love to read. I'm not as good with writing my ideas down, but I did find the process really, really challenge. It challenged me to dig deep and to solidify a lot of the ideas that I have. And so I found it as a very valuable and rewarding process. And I could say, given the right topic, given the right level of inspiration, I could see myself writing another one for sure.
I like that. Glad to hear. As you continue to read, and as reviews come in, especially for your book, I'm sure you'll get a little bit of gust of wind to on your back, to want to write that next book. So I will put in the show description the link, for everyone to get Reggie's book, The Resilient Scale. But Reggie, where else can people find you and follow you?
I think the best place to follow me is on LinkedIn. So I mean, LinkedIn is probably the right channel for connecting and just having it, a quick conversation on there, and then jumping into Zoom call, something like that. But yeah, I would say LinkedIn is the best place.
Excellent. And I'll put that link inside of the show description as well. Reggie, thank you so much. Congrats on all the successes that you've had. Obviously, lots of hard work. It didn't just come to you, but we thank you for writing your book and then for coming and telling us more about it, about what's inside of it, and then why you self-published. And we wish you all the best of success when this book does come out.
Thanks a lot, John. Really appreciate you having me on the show.